In this video, we're taking a quick trip down memory lane. A viewer recommended I react to this video from 2008 entitled The Race for the Electric Car. So let's do exactly that. And before we get into it, if you want to instantly unlock over 100 exclusive videos plus my 10-year Tesla stock price targets and loads of other perks, including optional access to my Tesla valuation model, join our growing community of thousands of supporters on Patreon with the link in the pinned comment. You can also pick up some Tesla, Elon and investment themed merch in the merch store. This video is now approximately 14 years old.
The price of oil is up, gas-guzzling cars are out, and a race for a fuel-free, practical electric car is on. It includes the usual suspects, Detroit, Japan, Germany. But here's a surprise. A newcomer with no experience at building cars has entered the race, Silicon Valley. The jury is still out on whether electric cars can ever really be practical.
Spoiler alert, the jury wasn't out at the time. It's not out today. Some people didn't see this. It was never up for debate. Predictable cost declines on the most expensive component, lithium-ion batteries. The fact that EVs hadn't been manufactured at volume, meaning they weren't benefiting from economies of scale. I mean, this was all obvious. That's why Tesla was pursuing this aggressively.
But the computer geeks in California are betting that their inventiveness can beat out Detroit's cumbersome bureaucracy in producing a viable electric.
Holy shit. I have to say already, 34 seconds in, boy, this has aged well.
One of the reasons electric cars have never taken off has been battery technology. A few years ago, someone wondered, why not use the batteries they put in laptop computers, called lithium-ion batteries? That's when the environmentally conscious high-tech industry in California jumped in. This is the first all-electric sports car, the Roadster, made by Tesla Motors, a small startup in Northern California.
Yeah, you can floor it. No problem. It'll be fine.
All right, here I go. You ready? The chairman of Tesla, Elon Musk, says the Roadster can accelerate from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. It's propelled by more than 6,000 finger-sized laptop batteries and not a single drop of oil. Silicon Valley's Elon Musk made his fortune by inventing PayPal, the online banking service. He launched Tesla 5 years ago with no experience at all in the car business. Now he has over 1,000 orders for the Roadster from people like George Clooney, and Governor Schwarzenegger can afford it. This beautiful Roadster costs a fortune.
$109,000.
$109,000.
It's a deal.
It's a deal.
And our car is twice the efficiency of a Prius. So a Prius is a gas-guzzling hog by comparison with our cars.
He says the Roadster can go over 200 miles before you have to plug it in to any ordinary wall outlet. 4 to 30 hours for a full charge.
It's very easy. It's just like plugging in a hairdryer. It's super simple. Yeah?
Even a girl could do it, is that what you're trying to say?
Even a girl.
From the beginning, Musk wanted to prove that innovative and nimble Silicon Valley could build a better green car than lumbering, bureaucratic Detroit.
Man, oh man, this has aged well. As we've seen, 14 years later, this has played out. Detroit automakers, half a decade or more behind Tesla, likely to go bankrupt because of their incompetence, their inability to catch up and chase. In fact, their complete and utter blindness to the inevitable transition to EVs. Looking back 14 years later, it's a little bit hard to understand. Why is it that with such incredible proof of concept, the original Tesla Roadster, 200 plus miles of range, using lithium-ion batteries, the technology is still yet to fully evolve? Obviously, with costs predictably declining and energy density predictably increasing over time, why is it that when a company like Tesla is appearing on 60 Minutes back in 2008, 2 years before their IPO, legacy automotive manufacturers, shout out to Detroit, aren't thinking, this thing actually looks decent, a couple of 100 miles of range, insane acceleration. Maybe there's something in these electric vehicles. We should probably start on those now.
Outside of Detroit, everybody thinks Detroit is dumb.
Well, they think you're hidebound.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing.
Bob Lutz, vice chairman of General Motors, is the man in charge of developing their new products. And he says he owes Tesla and its Roadster a debt of gratitude.
If a small Silicon Valley startup believes that they can do a commercially viable electric car, are we going to sit here as General Motors and say, well, a guy in California can do it, but we can't?
So credit where it's due here, Bob Lutz praising Tesla for opening GM's eyes to the fact that a compelling electric vehicle was viable. The question is, in the 14 years since these comments, and Lutz no longer at GM, What the fuck happened? Everything sounded so promising. They were starting to see the light, yet the penny still didn't drop. GM could have been all in, aggressively chasing after Tesla 14 years ago, but they didn't.
That didn't sound very good.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And so the race was on, with Lutz overseeing the research and development of the Chevy Volt, which is a 4-door family electric.
So you see that it's got twin screens.
The Volt is not purely electric. It's called a plug-in hybrid. It'll drive on battery power alone for 40 miles. Go beyond that, and a small gasoline engine kicks in to recharge the battery while you keep driving.
78% of trips in the United States are under 40 miles a day. If all those people had Volts, you would have 78% of Americans basically never using another drop of gasoline.
Everything about the Volt, he says, works like a conventional car, except there's no noise.
There's one thing we can do for people who miss the sound of the engines. We sell them a CD with various engine sounds. So you'd be able to pick Ferrari V12 or, Le Mans Corvette.
A car that can go up to 40 miles before it uses any gas at all.
GM is already touting the car in TV ads, even though they don't yet have a working prototype.
The real trick on the car is software.
Let's take a moment here. Lutz is abso-fucking-lutely right. I mean, the guy nailed it. The key is software. Again, I asked the question 14 years later, what the fuck happened? Lutz understood. He got it, at least in part. EVs now becoming viable. If a Silicon Valley startup can do it, why can't we? Software is critical to these vehicles. My best guess, it was a little bit more difficult to actually execute on these obvious things than Lutz and GM realized. Either that or they're absolute fucking morons and for some reason saw the opportunity, knew what needed to be done and then just didn't do anything.
Needs to know where home plate is. So if you, for some reason, have gone from work instead of directly home, you've gone shopping and you're starting to run out of battery on the way home, the computer will tell the gas engine, look, he's 5 miles from home, only run for 3 minutes because he only needs enough to get home.
What about safety? In 2006, Dell was forced to issue the biggest recall in electronics history when its lithium-ion batteries burst into flames. Lutz says GM has solved that problem with its batteries, but they need a lot more testing to check how durable and reliable they are in extreme weather and real road conditions. Still, Lutz insists the Volts will be in dealerships in 2010.
We've spoken to people who say, Lutz is crazy. They cannot do this by then. It's just not going to happen.
Right. We'll see. Somebody's going to have egg on their face.
It was GM with egg on its face in the late 90s for killing off its first electric cars, the EV1s, and then crushing them into scrap metal, which fueled theories that GM had conspired with the oil industry, the electric car.
I think even our lawyers now would admit that perhaps crushing them was not the smartest thing in the world to do. I get emails that say, I hope you enjoy the billions that you got from the oil companies, you swine.
It's that history and his record of promoting SUVs and the Hummer that make people wonder about Lutz's new role in developing GM's new green cars.
So let's talk about your own personal carbon footprint.
Yes.
How many helicopters do you own?
I have one and my wife has one. She's a
His and her
commercial
helicopters.
pilot. Yeah.
How many jets do you have?
I have 2.
Now, you have a terrible reputation with environmentalists, as you well know.
No, actually, some of them kind of like me, but go ahead anyway.
Well, they don't like what you said about global warming.
Right.
Do you want to repeat what you said about global warming?
Of course not, because this is a family network. That's correct.
You don't think there's global warming? Is that really true?
I'm not going to get into this because
you got into so much trouble when you said it the first time.
That could be right, yeah.
What Lutz said in January is man-made global warming is a crock of shit. So he's no environmentalist. But he is a realist. Gone are the gas guzzlers. To save GM, he knows he has to come up with gas-efficient cars. But Detroit is broke, while in California, things are buzzing. The venture capitalists who funded the information superhighway are now pouring money into the actual highway, backing at least 30 small startup companies. Ray Lane is a senior partner at Kleiner Perkins, the venture capital firm that helped start Google and Amazon. Now he's investing in 3 electric car startups.
When I first started talking about the possibility of investing in automobiles, my partners thought I was crazy. We're not out of the woods yet. I haven't proven I'm not crazy yet.
One of his startups is Fisker Motors that's
Now, you might still be aware of the company Fisker. You may not be aware that they've previously gone bankrupt and a new company has risen like a phoenix by the same name. Turns out reaching volume production is kind of hard.
It's making the Karma, a 4-door plug-in hybrid like the Volt, with some added gee-whiz features.
This is a solar roof.
It's a solar roof. So this will generate electricity. It will not generate enough to drive the battery, though, like the engine does.
Just a few comments on the idea of a solar roof. Idiotic then, idiotic today. Unless you can massively increase the actual surface area of the roof, e.g. something that folds out with a huge array of solar panels. It's just a complete and utter waste of time and stupid to be putting solar panels on the roof of vehicles in order to charge them. It's just dumb. It doesn't make sense. It's nice in theory, but when you actually think about it, it's just a total unnecessary waste of resources and unnecessary engineering for almost zero return.
Yeah.
It will drive enough electricity to maybe cool the car while it's in the parking lot.
Some of the other
That's right. The solar panel on the roof may generate enough electricity to cool the temperature of your car. Not to move it, not even an inch, but to cool it down a little.
startups in California are less conventional. Like this all-electric, it's a bird, it's a plane, it's an Aptera due out this Christmas.
Amazingly, Aptera is still actually in business.
But one issue with all these cars is that much of the electricity to power them would come from burning coal, which produces greenhouse gases. So they're not necessarily the perfect green solution.
4 years ago, we had the hydrogen car. 3 years ago, there was ethanol. And now it's the electric car.
Right.
In each case, there were such problems with them that everybody's focus moved on to the next thing. Isn't that going to happen again with these electric cars?
It could. I mean, that is what Silicon Valley is all about. A good entrepreneur that fails, we will pick that person up, fund them again to do something new if it's a good idea.
Is there any thinking with these 30 little Henry Fords that we've got to crush Detroit?
Some. I mean, there was a company pretty well known, Tesla,
Yeah.
for a long time believed that what would be their advantage is they had no car people.
The look on Leslie's face says it all. How could that possibly be an advantage, not having any car people? 14 years later, I think we know the answer. No dinosaur brains. And of course, we saw as Tesla began to ramp up volume production of their first and second vehicles, the Roadster and then the Model S, they did have some struggles. Even some issues with the Model 3, their first volume production vehicle. All the stuff the car guys and car girls are experts at, panel gaps, fit and finish and so on, Tesla was totally butchering. But that was the least important stuff. Most people not understanding that. What really mattered, the battery, the thermal management of the battery, and the software.
No Detroit people. We're going to build a vehicle company exactly like we build a computer company. So it's when you have your car repaired, it's going to be going into your Apple store. We'll give you a latte. These are real statements. So they've certainly found out you cannot build a car company without car people.
There's sort of this feeling of, especially in Silicon Valley, that people in the automobile business aren't very smart.
In hindsight, decade and a half later, I think there might have been something in that. After all, if the car people were smart, they would have seen the opportunity in electric vehicles and been all in a decade and a half ago.
And then they get into it and they find out, holy mackerel, look at all this government regulation, look at what everything costs. And then once they're into it, they figure out, hey, this isn't an easy business after all.
Now, in fairness, Lutz does have a point there. A lot of people don't appreciate how difficult it is to be in the automotive business. You've got supply chain, all the moving parts, literally, and processes to actually manufacture things, a huge amount of coordination. It is difficult and complicated. But the key here is that's just the first layer. What matters more than that, logistics, supply chain, and manufacturing the products. Everything that an EV company like Tesla has stacked on top, the software expertise, the battery expertise, the new innovations in manufacturing techniques, things like over-the-air updates, unheard of before Tesla. It took a while for a company like Tesla to get good at their car stuff, but now they're better than everyone else at the car stuff. Hence when everyone's, I can't get the chips, can't make the cars, woe is me. Tesla's like, yeah, well, we just rewrote firmware and got new chips and we're still massively expanding our production.
And I think that's about the point where Tesla is right now.
But These startups out in California don't have the union problems, the healthcare costs, the labor issues. These startups don't have boardrooms, they don't have nervous shareholders.
Yeah, but they have no experience in the car business.
And again, in fairness, Lutz did have some reasonable points there. No experience. I mean, back in 2008, how could you know Tesla would be successful? But it's been interesting following Tesla since the early Roadster days. The goalposts always move. First, these Silicon Valley people don't know how to make cars. Then, the batteries, there's not sufficient range, no one's going to want to buy these things, and they're too expensive. Then there's, Tesla's losing money on every vehicle, therefore they're going bankrupt soon. Then, the competition is coming. It's important to stress, a decade and a half later, Tesla has mastered everything necessary. They're in a dominant lead, and the things they were supposed to suck at, which they did initially, they've also mastered. They have industry-leading profit margins. Remember, this company with no experience in the car business, which is really hard, now has greater profit margins than any other automotive company, save for an exception like Ferrari, who are selling $300,000 cars. So at the time Lutz made these comments, they were all fair and reasonable. But we've now seen Tesla consistently defy the odds in the ensuing decade and a half. Yet today, companies, the finance media analysts still aren't giving Tesla the credit they deserve. They're still doubting them. The competition's still coming. Unbelievable.
And you think that outweighs all of this?
Absolutely, sure.
It is true that Tesla is now hiring lots of people with Detroit on their resumes. Their next project is development of a four-door family sedan that'll compete with the Chevy Volt.
The Model S. Competing with the Chevy Volt. You mean taking a dump across its face?
Did you used to think this was going to be easier than it was?
Yes, I probably thought it would be a little easier.
How much more has the project cost than you thought it was going to cost so far? Twice as much?
Probably,
3 times as much?
No, probably twice as much, I think, ish, thereabouts.
How much did you put into this company?
Oh man, about $55 million.
$55 million of your own money.
Yeah, it's a little more than I expected.
No one's figured out how to make an electric car cheap. Tesla plans to sell its four-door sedan for $60,000. Lutz at GM wants the Volt to be more of an everyman car.
How much is it going to cost me, the consumer?
I started out very optimistically and said, okay, well, I think we can sell this thing for $20,000, and that turned out to have been like one of those I wish I hadn't said that. And then we started hoping for well below 30, and now we're trying to keep it south of 40.
Notice the enormous mistake that the experienced car guy made, not starting at the high end, driving the cost of your technology down, increasing volume, and eventually getting to a lower price, affordable mass market vehicle.
$40,000 is not an everyman car by any stretch.
That's true.
To get buyers, GM will have to sell the car at a loss. Bad news for a company already burning $1 billion in cash every month.
I'll tell you what, we can afford a tiny little loss on a car, but we can't afford a $20,000 loss per car. That's just not on.
That's because GM is in financial straits. Bob Lutz is trying not only to produce a moneymaker, but also prove with the Chevy Volt that his company and his town are still the address for innovative cars.
No further comment necessary.
So a lot about General Motors' reputation and image is riding on this.
That is probably an understatement.
So basically, in your mind, it has to succeed.
Of course it does.
It didn't.
For what it's worth, I stake my reputation on it.
So where does that leave Lutz's reputation? Now, in fairness, Lutz has changed his tune. 3 or 4 years ago, he was still very, very negative on electric vehicles, on Tesla, expecting the company to fail. But he has since given a huge amount of credit to Tesla, in particular Elon Musk, for the execution, the vision, the leadership, and the compelling products. Even going as far as to say they were finally figuring out how to actually put the cars together, the stuff car people are really good at, e.g. not having gaping panel gaps. I always find it fascinating to look back at some historical predictions, thoughts, and comments from people in business that has since been disrupted by innovative leaders such as Tesla. Again, I really want to stress, this was 14 years ago. 2 years before Tesla had even IPO'd, before they'd even unveiled the Model S. This was 4 years before the Model S went on sale. Bob Lutz at Government Motors recognizing there is some potential in EVs here, and we also fucked up massively by killing the EV1. If you want more info on that, check out the film Who Killed the Electric Car. Staggering. But the fact that 14 years ago, almost a decade and a half ago, there was recognition that software was important, and if this Silicon Valley startup can do it, surely we can. The fact that a decade and a half later, almost no progress has occurred seems to me to suggest a lack of vision, a lack of leadership, a lack of competence, And most important of all, a lack of ability to execute. It seems like the competition has been coming all over itself for the last 14 years. Question I have in closing is Mary B.S. Barra willing to stake her reputation on government motors being successful in their transition to EVs? I doubt it. It doesn't matter. As long as President Biden says that she led and it mattered, it doesn't actually matter whether or not GM did lead and or matter and or go bankrupt trying. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and also just some final food for thought. Who's looking forward to watching some 2038 reactions to videos recorded in 2022 with legacy automotive manufacturers making bold claims about their electric vehicle plans? Not strategy, the 460,000 different models they're announcing and releasing tomorrow, and how they're definitely going to catch up to Tesla by 2025. And lastly, if you'd like to support the channel, you can join Patreon with the card in the corner or the link in the pinned comment to instantly unlock well over 150 exclusive videos, my Tesla stock price targets out over the next decade, and plenty of other perks. So I'll see you over on Patreon. I'm Stephen Mark Ryan, this is Solving the Money Problem, and I love you all. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you want to support the channel and instantly unlock over 100 exclusive videos, plus my 10-year Tesla stock price targets and loads of other perks, including optional access to my Tesla valuation model, join our growing community of thousands of supporters on Patreon with the link in the pinned comment. You can also pick up some Tesla, Elon, and investment themed merch in the merch store. And if you're still watching, you're awesome. Please let me know your thoughts on today's video in the comments below, and click the card on screen now to watch the next video.